On April 16, 1980, US President Jimmy Carter signed off on an audacious mission that would free 52 Americans who'd been held hostage at the US Embassy in Tehran. The mission was named Operation Eagle Claw, and the man who was chosen to carry it out was Lieutenant General James Vaught, who had fought in both Korea and in Vietnam. With Jimmy Carter and the Pentagon behind him, what could possibly go wrong?
Some 60 Americans are now beginning their 6th day of captivity inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran.
2 days earlier, several hundred young people, mainly students at Tehran University, had taken over the embassy. We are not occupiers, they said. We have thrown out the occupiers. But instead of chasing all the Americans out of the compound, the Iranians imprisoned them in a building somewhere on these grounds. They have been hostages ever since.
After 5 months of intensive preparation, a very complicated rescue plan emerged. It involved 11 groups of men drawn from the US Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the CIA. Eagle Claw would require 3 US Air Force MC-130s to carry a 118-man assault force from Masira Island near Oman into a remote spot 200 miles southeast of Tehran, codenamed Desert One. The Lockheed MC-130 is the basic designation for a family of aircraft operated by the US Air Force Special Operations Command. The MC-130's missions are infiltration, exfiltration, and resupply of Special Operations Forces, and mid-air refueling of Special Ops helicopters. The first of the variants, the MC-130E, was developed to support clandestine Special Operations missions during the Vietnam War. Accompanying the MC-130s were 3 EC-130s, which served as fuel transports, plus Air Force AC-130 gunships for air support. The AC-130 is a heavily armed, long-endurance, ground attack variant of the C-130 Hercules. It carries a wide array of ground attack weapons that are integrated with sophisticated sensors, navigation, and fire control systems. The MC-130s would rendezvous with 8 RH-53D helicopters from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. The helicopters would carry the assault force to a remote location 65 miles from Tehran, where they'd camp overnight. 24 hours later, the team would be picked up and driven to the embassy by translators and guides provided by the CIA. The team would storm the embassy, free the hostages, then would rally at a nearby soccer stadium, where they'd be picked up by the American helicopters. The helicopters would fly them to the Mansouriya Air Base, where US Air Force C-141 transports would fly the assault team and the rescued hostages out of Iran. A little-known part of the plan included Python Force, comprised of 90 Force Recon Marines, led by Major Oliver North. Python Force was a backup plan, ready to extract any American air crews or Delta Force members who'd become trapped in Iran during Operation Eagle Claw. Unfortunately, the plan, which had almost no margin for error, would fail dramatically. A tour bus carrying 43 Iranian citizens along a popular highway drove straight onto the Desert One landing strip, which was supposed to have been located at a secret location in the desert. The bus was forced to stop by US Army Rangers, and the passengers were held under guard on one of the C-130 aircraft. Shortly afterward, a fuel truck came down the highway. When it failed to stop, the Americans fired an anti-tank weapon at it, which set the tanker on fire and lit up the surrounding area. Next, a pickup truck approached. But when he saw the military operation and the burning fuel truck, he quickly turned around and fled. Soon the aircraft carrying the 118-man assault force arrived. The soldiers filed out of the C-130, then waited for the helicopters to arrive. But an hour later, they were still waiting. In the Gulf of Oman, 8 of the big RH-53 helicopters finally took off from the Nimitz and were en route to Desert 1. But during the long flight, 2 helicopters were forced to abort due to mechanical problems. Meanwhile, the pilot of a 3rd helicopter chose to continue the flight despite a hydraulic problem. The 6 remaining helicopters represented the absolute minimum that were required for the mission to continue. Mother Nature would present Operation Eagle Claw with its biggest challenge as the 6 remaining helicopters flew into an enormous sandstorm. Inside the storm, it was a turbulent mess. The pilots had 0 visibility, and tiny grains of sand were sucked into the helicopter's turbines, which gradually wore away the bearings and blades. Nonetheless, all 6 arrived at the Desert 1 landing site just an hour behind schedule. But there was a problem. The RH-53 with hydraulic problems could not be repaired, and this meant there were not enough helicopters to continue the mission. So Operation Eagle Claw was aborted. The assault team would be reloaded onto the MC-130s, then flown 900 miles back to Masira Island. The helicopters would finish refueling, then they'd fly back to the Nimitz. But moments later, tragedy struck. A helicopter, which was flying out of the way of a fuel-laden EC-130, inadvertently slammed right into it, killing 5 airmen on the EC-130 and 3 Marines on the RH-53. The commander ordered the remaining helicopters to be abandoned and put everyone on board the remaining EC-130s, which quickly departed for Masira Island. By necessity, the bodies of the US soldiers were left behind in the burning wreckage. And with that, Operation Eagle Claw came to an end.
It is an indelible image of American military failure. The wreckage of the disastrous attempt to rescue American hostages from Iran.
On January 20th, 1981, just minutes after the inauguration of President Ronald Reagan, Iran released the American hostages. They had been held in captivity for 444 days.